Welcome back, everybody. We are here today with another episode of the yet to be named podcast where we talk about random things and I find random people to join me. Random people, please introduce yourselves.
Uh, I'm Hugo. I'm random person number one, and work with Jared. And glad to be here.
And my name's Matt. I'm random person number two, and I always have a something to say about almost every topic. So I think we should let it ride and see where this evilness goes.
Perfect. All right. So a lot in the news recently about student debt forgiveness. That Biden's been talking. I mean, well, whoever's running the strings that control Biden, because I've never seen a more geriatric puppet in my life. But whoever's making those decisions has decided that student loan debt's the thing they're going to run on in November. And well, for off the bat, what are you guys' impressions of forgiving student loan debt?
So my first thought is um, I'm a supporter of small government and government not being in our day to day lives. So I support the government, defending us abroad in our military and helping. I like Social Security. I like certain programs, but I think government should be seen and not heard. And it's a net that if we drop, we're caught. But it just it's getting too much, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And this thing with the forgiving loan debt, especially I'm in my 50s. We put myself through college. We put my wife through, bachelor, master's, and a doctorate, and we're putting our daughter through school. And when we first had her 20 years ago, we knew that we could not afford her going to college, but we wanted to give her that opportunity. So literally, we started putting money away, maybe $100 a month, just trying to save enough money so that we could send her to a school. And we didn't even know how much that school was going to cost when it came time. And so we didn't do student loans. And because we sacrificed for 20 years, got the money together to send her to college, and because we did the right thing, now we're being penalized. Now they're not forgiving the 100,000 that I spent, or the 300,000 that my wife spent, or the 100,000 we're slotted to spend for my daughter. But it's for people who it's almost like illegal immigration, right? People jump the line and they get in for free, and all the people who've been waiting 10 years kind of get put to the back because they're doing it right. And now we're trying. So it's like teaching us not to do the right thing.
For sure. Yeah, and actually, on your point about stuff that they're not forgiving or paying back, my Aunt Wendy, she paid. I mean, she spent most of my life paying off her student loan debts and paid it off within the last 5 to 10 years, and it was living, you know, below where they wanted to be and where her job was paying her. Like they were living very modestly, you know, and I wouldn't say scraping by any means, but definitely had harder times because of it. And now they finally have paid all that off and are doing a lot better. And it's like, oh, so they're just they're punishing the people who did it right. So it's exactly like you said. What do you think, Google?
Yeah, I think that. Well, I mean, I didn't really involve myself too much in like the whole topic. I didn't even know about it until Jared told me about it today. But just kind of thinking about it, I think it creates like irresponsible people because what it's doing is it's telling people that you can make the decision to take out hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and then just not pay some of it back. And I think it's unfair. Like Matt said, he paid for education for himself, for his wife and his daughter, and that he's not getting that money back. with your aunt the same way. um it just tells people that, like, hey, you can take out all this debt, and the government will take care of it. And I just think it's unfair, and people know what they're getting into when they're taking out debt. They, or at least they should know.
They
At least
should,
they
but
should know what
it's
they're getting
actually
into.
that's an interesting point because the people who are taking these loans for the most part is like 18-year-olds. I
Well,
mean,
that's
mhm,
another issue too, because sorry to cut you off, but that is another issue because didn't I think I heard about, was it Navient or somebody, some private student loan company. Um, oh, what was it? Were they sued or something like that in January or something like that? They had to forgive like billions of dollars of debt because there was a lawsuit against them that it was, oh, what's the word?
predatory.
Predatory loans.
Hmm.
Yeah, there was predatory loans, and I mean, it's so true. You're giving hundreds of, I mean, not hundreds, tens of thousands of dollars to these young people who probably have never gone through any kind of like financial course or financial education. Like, they don't know how to handle their money. Like, I didn't know when I graduated high school. I didn't know how to budget. I didn't know how to save, right? I didn't know the details of like credit, and it's just, yeah, it's bad. I mean, I think maybe, I don't know if maybe we should have people like take a course or like know what they're getting into before they actually are approved for some kind of loan. But yeah, I think it can be predatory. To your point about like these 18-year-olds getting like tens of thousands of dollars.
And Hugo, you make a good point. Where when I was a kid, my mom taught me how to balance a checkbook and do all that financial piece. And you know, during my growing up years, we were putting more and more on schools to educate our kids in ways that us as adults should educate our kids. So when my kids grew up, I assumed that the schools were educating them on finances, which is my mistake. I completely take, and they were ill prepared to have a checking account or credit cards because the school, and I thought I relied on the school, which I shouldn't have done. That is 100% my fault. But I think parents are not educating their kids on credit and checkbooks and all those important things. And because they're not doing it, you guys are going out there and you're trying to figure it out, and you're just getting smacked in the face. You're getting kicked in the gut, and it's and I blame me. I blame the parents that we need to go back around and said we need to teach our kids morality. We need to teach our kids, how to manage your money and your finances, those types of things.
Yeah, I think that's huge. That's one of those, if you had a crazy conspiracy board like I'm dying to have, I'll have one eventually, with all the yarn and the pins and tacks and whatnot. I'll have one about something eventually. But if you make one about like cultural and societal issues, that I think is a huge red thread running through everything because it's abdication of responsibility. And as the government gets bigger, it's almost they're not only encouraging you to, they're dang near forcing you to become not only more reliant, but in those areas where they're not even taking care of it, we just assume they are. For example, pandemic response. You know what? I want to keep this episode on YouTube. I'm sorry. I didn't say it. I'm sorry. I didn't
How
say it.
dare
I'm
you?
sorry. I mean, they've gotten rid of Fauci now, right? Damn it. I think we made it past the 5-minute mark, so hopefully the censors aren't paying too much attention. Oh, God.
Well, and you make a good point. There's so much going on out there that it is hard to stay on one topic because they seem all tied together.
I think they are.
And it's like, yeah, and so when you try to get off on one piece of it, it's like you want to. It's like it's like eight other things that are tied to it, and it's easy to get distracted. And maybe that's what they want to do. I don't
Seems
know.
like a feature, not a bug. That's another red streak that pops up when you start looking at government. You're like, well, they do this poorly, and they do this poorly, and they do this poorly, and son of a b, all three results happen to work out in their favor and against ours. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna keep assuming that was an accident. That's basically what
Well,
we've done.
one thing that they've said, one thing I was taught for years is that if you want something to be run poorly, you have the government run it. And they've done a horrible job on just about everything.
Yep.
Now, one thing they're going to say, well, we did a good job on is we did a good job in running the military. They used to do a great job on the military, but you know why? Because the government didn't run the military. It
Right.
was the generals that ran the
Right.
military. It's when the military stopped running the military and the politicians started running the military that we have all this woke crap and we're getting off task. But the thing is, it goes back to the student loan debt. Is that if we're going to give it to the government to manage it, they're just going to mess it up.
Yeah.
It just yeah. Sorry.
My favorite example to use is the DMV. Like, if you want to look at how efficiently the government runs a thing, go to the DMV. Go to the DMV's website. They can't even build a website. So, I honestly, I actually kind of like wandering topics. I like to talk about a thing, see where it leads us, and then loop back. When do you think that the politicians started running the military more so than the generals? Because I would hazard a guess. I have way less knowledge than you, I would think, on this, but I would think it would be sometime between the Korean and the Vietnam Wars.
I think they started talking about it during the Korean and Vietnam Wars, and it was slow to
Mm.
come into action. But they started by they're talking about these rules of engagement. That's how it all kind of started, at least from where I was sitting. And that my favorite movie to utilize this example is Black Hawk Down, where the guy is in a Humvee and he's running a 50 caliber on top, or it was a 60. I can't remember which. It was a machine gun on top of a Humvee, and the guy goes, Colonel, they're
Yeah.
shooting at us, right? And
They're
he's all,
shooting
well,
at
then
us. What do I
shoot
do?
back.
Shoot back.
What could you could you imagine that? And
Yes,
there
I
there was
can.
a time where, yeah, there was a time where we shot first, and now we can't even shoot first. We gotta wait till they shoot us, and we can only aim at the people who have guns. The thing is they're hiding. They're hiding behind people that don't have guns. So there's ugliness in war,
Yeah.
and the thing is sometimes you have to pull the trigger first, and you gotta clear it out. So I think now that I don't think the generals are running it, I think it's the government that's telling them,
For
this
sure.
is how we want it done. Yeah.
By now, yeah. I mean, I think, like I said, I think it probably happened because Vietnam ended up being a disaster of like, we didn't win that war. We left, right?
I, my thought, and I'm not a historian, but my thought is that we were winning the war,
Mm.
and then the politicians stepped in, and
Right.
I think it was because of the Tet Offensive that they showed all the dead bodies, and back in America they couldn't
Certainly
stomach
helped.
it, so they pushed the politicians to get. And what did that teach our enemies? Show a lot of dead bodies on TV, and America will pull out. And we pulled out of. If you look at Black Hawk Down, right after that, we pulled out of there. I mean, and like I said, I'm not a historian, but that's where I look like it kind of started kicking in was probably Korea, but really started to take more effect in Vietnam. And when everything hit the news and the politicians were getting beat up, they're saying we need to take closer control over the military.
And then by the early '90s, it was a done deal, right? Desert Storm and
It could
Shield.
have been, yeah, yeah, yeah. There was
Yeah.
they
And
they were. I think they were still trying to make it a little covert, but I think they were more involved than we'd like to admit.
now they're policing language in the military.
There you go. So my comment is our army needs to be the most ruthless part of who we are. We need to be professional. I totally agree.
Break glass
But
in case of war.
we need barbarians out there to just and then to do all the woke and all these other things, I think takes away from the aggressiveness of our. Imagine if you see the commercials for like the North Korean military and the Russian military, and they just look, and Chinese
Right.
military, they just look, and then they go on this and then doing this infomercial on he, them, and those. It's just it
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
it. it does not paint a very I'm scared of them picture kind of thing.
I don't know if you've seen it, but in the last 2 years, I've seen two commercials that made me laugh my ass off. One was Raytheon, and they were talking about how awesome and inclusive their company is, which, you know, if you're a weapons company with many think tanks who are convinced that we need to go to war in every corner of the globe, and it has nothing to do with the fact that it'll quadruple profit shares, it could. You know what? Thank God we can get everybody in on that. It's so good that we can make sure that the trans person feels safe and cuddly while they're making billions of dollars off of turning places into third world dust bowls. Anyway, the other one was like CIA or something like that, and it was basically the same commercial, where it was all inclusive and yay, we're now accepting these freaks. Was actually kind of the tone of the commercial to me. That's what it felt like. It's like, hey, these things that have been in the news, we're letting them in. Aren't we awesome? That's how it came off to me. But that's also why we are just now got out of a 20-year war.
Yeah, I could go all night on that one.
Yes, I imagine. But let's come back to student loan debt. Because actually, so speaking of bigger picture like this, I feel like what it is. So in the 60s, that's when I just looked this up today. I'm not some encyclopedia. But in the 60s, I think it was 67, Lyndon Johnson passed the Student Loan Act that allowed this to even be a thing. And it was, as everything with the government, it starts small and it's got these little restrictions. And then, it's like, I don't know if, so the income tax started as like only the top 11% of the money makers of the United States would pay like 3% of their taxes. And they swore it would never go below the 30% line. Go ahead.
Okay. My thought on taxes. Yeah, and that could be a whole episode too. Here's the one thing where I draw the line. And so my parents are on a fixed income. They're living off their Social Security. Uh, and what kills me is their Social Security is taxed. Why do you work for freaking 60 years of your life and then you retire and 32% of that income becomes taxed? And on top of that, you have to pay for your medical and dental and all that. And those are going to, I think they went up $100 a month this year, and it's like it seems like you're making 1,800 gross a month. You got to pay like 200 a month on medical. And it's like how do you live on those kind of things? So I mean, I don't believe that the richest should pay all the taxes. I think everyone should pay something, except for retirees. They put into it. I mean, if they're living on a fixed income of Social Security, then they should not be paying taxes. I mean, if they have millions, there should be a reasonable tax. And I love how a rich person pays 50% on taxes, and they go, "Oh, that's your fair share." It's like, man, you work hard your whole life to make some money, and then they want to take it away because you're not paying your fair share. That's a whole other topic.
Honestly, actually, I want to branch off of that because with people who, because usually, anybody who's saying that is going to be at least somewhat of a leftist or just not really paying attention politically and just repeating what they see on social media, right? Because that's basically the same thing. Like if you're not paying attention to politics and you just repeat whatever you see on social media or on TV or on anything popular, you just are a leftist. Like think about if you even have the opinion of somebody who's like a devout Christian, who's just not, or take Ben Shapiro, anybody who's devoutly religious, who's not comfortable with gay people, or just not approving of it or whatever. There's 1,000 different flavors of gay acceptance in the religious communities, right? And you can't say that without being destroyed on any, like you couldn't put that on a TV show that's not on Daily Wire or anything like that. But with the culture, what was I going to say? Dang it. Oh, with the taxes thing.
You're branching off on taxes.
Yeah. So for me, I'm an anarcho-capitalist libertarian. I think that the government shouldn't get to steal your money to do better things with it. Just if you think that the government does better with your money than you could, I don't know what to say, but just go look at the U.S. debt clock and see what they're doing with it, because they're wasting it. And any one of us could make better decisions with our own money, and all of us would make equally shitty decisions with everyone else's money. That's the real lesson to me. But I think, because the other piece of it is that it again goes back to the societal government taking over. Who, before Social Security, would what would happen with between generations? How would old people get taken care of?
Family,
Mm-hmm.
family, and church,
That is
religion,
exactly the answer.
and uh,
And
you
government
know what
takes the
kills
place
me
of
though.
those. Go ahead.
You're absolutely right, and I hear about that on all the shows. Is that government is replacing the family unit, and they're breaking up the family
On
unit
purpose.
so that, yeah, exactly. But what I was trying to get at is, as far as we were talking about. Oh, I would like to know. So, with all the stimulus, whether so, we live in California. So you got the federal stimulus dollars, you have the state stimulus dollars, you know, um, the all these monies that are being thrown at people for the forgiveness for your student loans, and the gas tax refund. I think California is doing. I'd like to see how much money, because I haven't seen any of it, but I'd like to see how much money people have been making in the last year to 2 years on all these dollars that the government is. And isn't it wild how they give out these dollars like a month or 2 months before every election? I don't know if you guys ever picked up on it. So our governor says he's going to release the inflation reduction,
Mm.
$1,000, or is it the gas or whatever? And he's doing it the last week in October, and we're voting him in or out the first week in November. Isn't that kind of unusual?
Right, but remember, you and I cannot go to a polling booth and wave a sign. That's illegal.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and what I've been hearing is that they think that Biden is buying votes with this because he doesn't think what they're saying is they don't think it'll pass through the Supreme Court. So, but if he can say, I fought for you, I can't control the Supreme Court because the other guy did it,
It's
put all those people in there. So it makes it like you got to vote Democrat if that's what you want, guys. So it's waving that carrot that never really materializes. I would think.
I agree, and I think the next level above that is it's not an accident. It's not. It's very well orchestrated and planned, and it's been happening for 40, 50. It's been happening for every one of our entire lifetimes, where it's literally just back and forth, left and right. It's a pendulum swinging like this. Well, actually, no. I would say it's a pendulum that swings all the way back and forth, and we never land in something that's rational or makes sense. Like if you had to set up a new government and you propose what we had today, there's not a single person, a single rational person that would agree to it. Like that, the amount of taxes being paid, the amount of laws and controls, the fact that there's not a single person alive who knows the entirety of the tax code, because they can't, because it's impossible. No one would set this up. No one. Well, no one
Do
that
you guys
doesn't get to directly benefit from it. Go ahead.
do you guys think that like the United States is so divisive because we've gotten so great and so powerful, like as a country, like we've gotten too big? Do you guys think that that's why we are so divisive and divided as a country?
I can go on a 10-minute rant. So, Dad, if you want to throw something, Matt, if you want to throw something in there.
So no, I don't think we've gotten too big. This is my thought. My thought is one side or the other. I blame both. I blame the left and I blame the right. They want their agenda, and they're figuring out ways to convince as many people as possible to vote for their agenda. And what they do is they create the division in the hopes that you'll vote for their agenda. And then when the Republicans win, then their agenda goes that way. When the Democrats win, their agenda goes the other way. So I think it's our politicians who are creating division because they're being fostered to do so by people are shoveling money their way. Soros would be a good example of that, and NRA would be another good
Yeah.
example of that,
Yeah.
where that where that they're trying to push their agenda and getting these politicians who are greedy sons of bitches to get what they want out of those politicians.
I think the only tiny caveat I would add to that is that the agenda that they're pushing is usually not necessarily the agenda they're actually trying to achieve. They tend to set. I mean, take the NRA as a beautiful, perfect example. They pretend to be the Second Amendment hardline defender of gun rights, right? That's at least the perception. I mean, if you ask a leftist, they're basically people who advocate for the purchasing and required owning of a rifle for every person in the United States, which I actually think wouldn't be a horrible idea, but that's an entirely different subject. But really, so the NRA's line, I don't know if this will sound familiar to you, but what the NRA says is, I think it's smart. Basically, keep the gun restrictions that we have in place already, but no new ones. That's their hardline stance. Not because really the answer is the Second Amendment. Period. There shall pass no law. That's not very interpretable. There's not supposed to be any restrictions on guns according to the Constitution. But that's not even the NRA's line. Like, me saying that, again, might get me kicked off YouTube. But they don't even have that. Like, they kind of market themselves. Like, they don't dissuade people from thinking that they're the gun advocate group, right? But their push is to not have any new gun laws. That's mediocre at best. But yeah, go ahead.
This thought has been bouncing in my head all day, but I think it is very pertinent to what Hugo's asking about. Is the federal government keeps talking that they want to negotiate with drug companies to reduce the cost of drugs. So why are they working with drug companies to reduce the price of drugs? But when it comes to education, they're just trying to refund money. They're not meeting with any college to reduce the cost of them, and they're making a boatload of money. So they're not going to the colleges and say, "Hey, you're charging too much. You need to reduce your price." No, they're throwing money at the issue.
Yep.
Why don't we throw money at the drug issue? So what's the difference? And I think it's an agenda item. I don't know. But it's like. Why do we negotiate prices on some things, but we throw money at other things? It doesn't equate in my mind.
No, that totally makes sense. I actually want to finish answering Ugo's question, but then I want to take that bridge back to student loan debt. So it was a very smooth transition, sir. So I think it's actually a yes and answer. It's exactly what Matt said about the agenda and division to get people to say F the other side. I'm going to vote for it. Blue no matter who, red until I'm dead.
The agenda,
right?
yeah.
But you also, this is a point that Dave Smith makes a lot, and I think it's 100% accurate, that the government has gotten so... The reason that the culture war, and it is... I mean, it used to be like you could... literally up until about 20 years ago, it was that you could have a beer with somebody who was... you could hang out and have friends with somebody who completely disagreed with you politically. I mean, 100% diametrically opposed, but it didn't really matter. Like, it was like sports almost. But the government got so big that now it's in every single aspect of our lives. Goes back to what you said at the beginning, Matt, where it's literally in every aspect of our lives. So once it's gotten to the point where it's gotten so big, it's a cancer that's touching every single piece of the body, and at this point choking it all out. And your voting decides who gets to control the country. I'm almost to the point where I believe the whole thing's WWE, but I'm trying to not quite go that far through the matrix. But it's gotten so big that every 4 years You're voting for whether you're going to be the one being dominated or dominating. I mean, think about how I have little to no sympathy for people like this, but think about how some of the people who have true Donald Trump derangement syndrome, full on, like, they still to this day will bring him up in any argument. And I know neither of you guys are really on Twitter, so you probably see less of this than I do, but oh my lord, is it out there. Like, it's literally, it's people. I have a meme saved where it says it's Trump with his fantastic smirk that is hilarious and entertaining, and he says, I'm living rent free in your head, son. I love it. I put it on people's comments all the time, and it's gotten me in a couple of heated arguments, but it's so true. And they literally, but imagine being that. I mean, I think it's nonsense, but imagine being that person and for 4 years having to live under who you think is literally Hitler. I mean, I think it's nonsense, but imagine being in that mentality for 4 years. You would do almost anything to get out of it. And anything that somebody did to help get you out of that, to get rid of that guy, you'd be like, hey, fine by me. Sam Harris literally said it on a podcast. I don't know. Ugo, I think you know who Sam Harris is, right? The atheist guy? Yeah. Dad, have you heard of him?
No.
He's intellectual type, Richard Dawkins atheist type dude, and he argues against religious people all the time. And for a long time, I don't know if he still feels this way, but he believes in determinism. Basically, like, everything is predetermined, atoms bouncing around the universe, and it will happen that way because of everything that came before it type crap. And he just literally like last week mentioned on a podcast, he said, I don't care. It wouldn't have mattered to me if Hunter Biden had, something like dead babies and hookers in his basement. I'm pretty sure I know it was some kind of something like that. He said, I wouldn't care if Hunter Biden had that in his basement. It still pales in comparison to what Trump did. Just what Trump did at Trump University. Like, they're so screwed in the head, so messed up by the fact that person will be controlling them, that they believe things like that. And
I think the press has a lot to do with that as well.
I completely agree. They make it more. They make the issue. I've actually said this about racism a lot. I think racism is the issue it is right now because it's been race baited for the last 15 years. Where, like, everything now, you can actually see it in news articles where when it goes along a certain narrative, if it's like white cop shoots anyone who's not white, they'll always mention race. If it's the other way, they do not mention it. I mean, one of the best cases of that was when, best, it's always awful when you're talking about things like this, but one of the best examples was when there was the guy who was a black guy and he had dreads. I don't remember what his name was, but I think he drove a van through like a Christmas parade or something like that within the last couple of years, right?
Yeah. I think it was last December.
If I remember correctly, the title of the article was "Van Runs Over Blank Number of People." Like, the van did it. Whereas imagine if it was a white dude and it was, literally anything more than, if it wasn't Oktoberfest where it's 98% other white people that got killed. Like, if it's anything but that, they would say it was racially motivated and terrorist, domestic terrorists this and white supremacists that. And they make it seem like there's a race riot going on outside. But yet, everybody knows. You go outside, and unless you're literally in one of these downtown Portland or Seattle or whatever in the middle of a riot, when those people are making that the issue, there's no problems. Not really.
Well, have you guys heard on the news, I think it was in Virginia, that if they're going to lay off teachers, the white teachers are the first ones to go.
What?
Oh, you haven't heard about that?
Wait. Okay, so wait. Did they say whites first, or did they say you can't fire people of color, leaving only white?
They said because of white privilege and all the things that the white people have done over the years, that it is fair that if anyone were to go, the white teachers are the first ones to go. I'm almost sure it's in Virginia. I can get more detailed information, but I read two articles. That's one, and
Wow.
the other article where it's a college, and I don't know where it was at. Where they put signs on the dorm that says a white person cannot enter unless they get a permission from one of the people of color, and then they're escorted with them. I mean, we're just fostering. I thought racism was on the decline. You'll never get rid of it. Stupid people,
It was.
but yeah, but it just what I'm hearing now is it's just insanity. It's literally insanity.
It's crazy. People using racism to fight racism.
Yeah,
I mean, they say they are, but they're clearly not. Like, cause you can't, cause so you can fight fire with fire. That's how it works. Like, it's a whatever it is, a counter fire or whatever that thing, whatever it's called, right? A counter burn. You can do that. You can't fight racism with racism. It's the same with violence. You can't get rid of violence by using violence because you have to have the thing. Like, it doesn't cancel itself out. It begets more of itself, and that's so. You can't get any other lesson from reading books. Anything about history of any period, there's nothing that's a more clear through line than, like, I mean, war and violence. And I meant to say love and violence. That's a bad slip. That, like, there's you have family units and villages and, like, togetherness, right? And then you have fighting. Those are the two oldest things we have. And most consistent. But I do think it's so. To wrap that long ass rambling up, I do think it's because the government's got so big that people feel like they have to fight almost to the death to be in control of the government. Because Republicans feel like, or otherwise, my tax dollars go to not even Republicans, just anybody who's against abortion for any reason. Religion is not the only argument, people. I hate that crap. Sorry, personal pet peeve. But anybody who's against abortion knows that if they don't win the election, that their tax dollars will go to, in their mind, killing babies. And not only just like, literally in certain states over the last 2 years, they had started passing bills where you can you can kill babies. Because it's not aborting when they're out of the womb. That's just, it's already a euphemism for killing a baby inside the womb, which is just a skin flap. So anyway, this is not gonna... I have my own opinions about that.
But you made a great point. Is government is just too big. It is. I think we should trim, and I'm. Let's eliminate the military out of this because I think the military is a standalone. But I think our government should be reduced by a good 50%. I really think it's. Imagine our politicians. How many people do they have working for them? So let's say we have a politician in California. They have offices in California, and they also have offices in DC.
Yep.
I mean, how many people do they have supporting them? And then they're adding 87,000 more employees in the IRS, which is making it the biggest agency. And it's like this is going crazy. The government is just out of control on how big it's getting.
How did the government get here though? Like, I'm sorry. How did the government get so big? Like, how does that happen? Where it just keeps it keeps getting bigger.
So, bureaucracy is one, inefficiency, and I mean, a huge part of it is what we've already been talking about, that people want someone to take care of them. But I think the best thing that summarizes it is a quote. I think it's from Kissinger, who I'm now blanking on who that actually is. I think he was either a general or some kind of a politician. But I'm going to look that one up and look a little less stupid. Maybe add it to the end of this podcast. But he said, or somebody said, I know this was quoted by a famous politician or something like that. Man, I sound so dumb. That a catastrophe is the perfect opportunity to grab more control. Yeah, it's not even a quote. I'm going to look that one up and actually add it to the end of this. But it was something along the lines of every crisis is an opportunity to gain more control.
Don't let a disaster go to waste.
That, good lord. Don't let a good disaster go to waste. There you go.
Here's my take on government. Government started off small and was very manageable as a part-time job. And what happened is people could not figure their stuff out. So they had to rely on someone to do it for them. And so the government, and then it grew and grew and grew. And what do people with power want? They want more
More
power.
power.
So how do you get more power? You centralize control. How do you centralize control? You make the government as big and as powerful as you can, so no one can stand up against you. That's what's happening. And 87,000 new IRS. That's insanity. And then what happens if the next one is going to be whatever, insert whatever department they're gonna come after us next. It's we need to reduce the government. It's too big, it's too powerful. It's supposed to be there to serve us, not the other way around. And I'm just not a big fan of paying my tax dollars so that they can take it and say, you know what, I think it should go here, I think it should go there. And I don't agree. I we do need to pay tax. We need to support the roads, the police, the military. I support all those things, but I don't think we should be, throwing money. If you can't afford college, don't go, guys. Sorry.
I agree.
It's the, or you do what I do, and you go to school for. It took me 7 years to get my 4 year degree. It took me 10 to 15 years to pay off the damn debt, but I did it, and because I had a degree, I got jobs with making income. So these people are going to Harvard, get $10,000 off or 20,000, depending what their income is, and they're going to make a quarter, or half a million, or even $1 million in attorney or whatever, or whatever that is. They don't need that, or they need to pay their debt like AOC. Right off my debt, right off my debt. Sorry, she just bought a Tesla. I can't afford a Tesla. Why should she write off her debt and I can't? I just it's not equity. It's not fair.
Yeah. I mean, going back to like paying taxes and stuff with this whole student loan debt, if this goes through, if it does go through, and all this debt gets forgiven, it's the taxpayers, right, that are going to be paying for all of this, right? I mean,
Right.
So that's
it's all going to
actually
fall on us.
that's some of the questions I wrote down as kind of guidelines, thinking we might actually need bones to walk through, but clearly we didn't. um, so three things that I wrote down: who owes the debt, who, like, demographics wise, is it mostly lower income families actually taking those debts out and sending their kids to college, or is it like upper middle class freaking Hollywood yuppies sending their kids to school and not wanting to do it the hard way, basically the blue collar way of saving your money and spending it and doing it that way? So who owns the debt, who's holding it, right? Is it the banks, is it the colleges, is it the government? And then who eats the losses if it does get canceled? Those to me are the core three questions. Because actually, to throw a bit of devil's advocate here, corporations have been on the government teat for ever, like at least since 2008. Banks and planes and too big to fail and everything got bailed out because they made terrible decisions with our money. And it's like, at least if it's the banks eating the loans, I can stomach that a hell of a lot more, because these were like we already kind of discussed, these are predatory loans, and the government subsidized and then guaranteed these loans between the 60s and the 2000s. And then once they subsidized and guaranteed them, that's when the banks started saying yes to any student debt. Any. I mean, do they say no to anybody? Do they have any qualifications for saying no to somebody for student debt? I doubt it. I guarantee you it's if you got approved to the school, period. Which gives the schools a lot of incentive to increase their people that they're approving, and increase their prices on their classes, and increase the number of required classes, and increase the number of required textbooks. That's all. They've all made it a giant racket preying on 18-year-olds. And now, so like I said, the question is, if it's forgiven, does forgiven mean eaten into the government debt, because that's not forgiven. That's making the people who basically didn't go to college. It's basically making it so that everybody pays it, meaning the people who didn't go to college, making less money, are now paying for people who took a bad loan and then wasted their time getting drunk and having crazy college, hookups and whatnot. And that's terrible. But if it's the banks eating it, or like you mentioned earlier, Ugo, that that Matt, that you mentioned about the colleges having to lower their prices or take a lot of that loss, I could stomach that. I still think it would teach a bunch of people terrible lessons, but if we're trying to tackle that bear, we got to take on TikTok and all of social media, all of Hollywood. Like, I don't think that making these people pay off their student loans is going to necessarily make them. It will make some people responsible adults and realize they need to make smarter decisions. Not a majority of them, I don't think. Right?
No, because I mean, sorry, go ahead, Matt.
No, Hugo, please go.
So I think it comes down to money management, because you mentioned, like, you kind of talked about the college student that's out there partying and stuff like that, and not really like worrying about the next
Their
40,
future.
50, 60 years that they're going to have to be paying debt for. They're just going to be spending their money on food and booze and partying and stuff like that. But we also got to talk about the people who want to live like the lavish lifestyle as well, and they spend money on things they really can't afford too. So not only do they have the student loan debt, but they also have like credit card debt. They have all this debt in cars, in car loans as well. And it's the, what is it, like, the consumer mentality, the consumer culture, where we go into debt because we want to look good in front of our colleagues, we want to look good in
It's
front of
all
family.
it's all brands too. That's the thing that blows my mind. It's not even stuff of quality. It's, are you wearing the right name?
Eh,
Exactly. And so I'll just say this, and then I'll finish. And it's just like, and so we get caught up in not managing our finances well. And I think that this whole thing of, like, because people will say, like, oh, I'm having issues with, or I'm struggling with paying off my student loan debt, but they're still going out to eat consistently weekly. They're still going out and buying a new car every 4 years, a brand new car every 4 years. They're still, paying for their lady to go get their hair done and their nails done and all of this stuff. And
Or for
and
their
so it's
man?
like,
Go
well,
ahead,
whatever,
sorry.
but, like, it's just, I think people need to take more responsibility of their finances. And I think if people learned to have financial peace, um, it'll be easier to pay off their student loans. And so, I mean, to Matt's point earlier, he did it, and not just for him to go to school, but for his wife to go to school and his daughter to go to school. And so, I've heard stories of people who work throughout their college education to pay for their college. Like, they're literally working to go to college and to pay off their college, so they don't get any debt. And of course, you have parents who are going to save up money as well to put their kids through school. And so, it's I think it all comes down to managing our finances, and learning to build, generational wealth for our families.
So, real fast to what you said, I agree. I think people misprioritize where their dollars go, because the same people that are saying they can't afford their college debt have the $1,000 new iPhone with all the freaking, the $100 a month or whatever, and then they have the laptop that's $1,500, it's $2,000 a month
Gucci bag.
with all their yeah.
Talk
So
about it.
so you're or and like my daughter's favorite place, Starbucks, where you get a $10 coffee.
$10
But to
milkshake.
what
It is not coffee.
so to Jared's point is so I wanted to get solar panels on my house years ago, and I couldn't afford it, and so I couldn't do it. And then when I got the money together that I could afford it, I went, and then California started a subsidy for solar panels. And when I priced the solar panels a second time, it was ironic that the price of the solar panels went up exactly the price of what the subsidy was. So literally, I
Yeah.
paid more money to get the solar panels because they wanted the government kickback from those solar panels. I heard the same thing with a buddy who wants to get a Tesla, and all of a sudden, after this thing passed, I heard Tesla went up like 9 grand, and it's like, well, I asked, well, how much is the subsidy for for battery operated cars? And they're claiming it was, I think it's $8,000 or $9,000. So it's bizarre, and same with college, right? When everyone was pushing, you need to go to college, you need to go to college, it doubled. It literally doubled. When I first went to college, they said it was going to be about 60 grand to go to college. And then it kind of, I don't know how, but when I finished, it was like 110,000. I'm all, what happened to 60K? So my fear is the 10K or the 20K. If you talk about the Pell Grant action to it, it's going to give the colleges an opportunity to raise their prices yet again, and they're already outrageous. On where you have to buy new books every class, and it's ironic that the book was written by the freaking instructor who's teaching the class, and the book's $100 for the book,
Or the dean of the
and it's
college, or the head of the department. Yeah.
yeah, and it's electronic, so you don't even get a physical copy of the book.
You're
So
literally renting
it's
rights
just
to read it for a year.
absolutely. So it's I think it's a boondoggle for education to make money, for Democrats to earn votes. That's all they're doing. They are spending our tax dollars to get additional votes for whatever. And I'm not saying the right's the right is just as guilty. I'm not advocating for the right or the left. I'm advocating against government because I don't like what they're doing. Like in California, we have the highest gas tax in the nation, but all these freaking toll roads keep popping up, and it's like, wait, what are these toll roads? It's $30 to go down the road when my gas tax is 56 cents a gallon, or it's there's a lot to it. So yeah, yeah.
Preach, brother.
Can I get an amen?
Preach.
Can I get an amen?
Yeah,
But
I'll let you go on that for forever, but go ahead.
so I have a point. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Pell Grant. A
Sounds
Pell
familiar.
Grant, yeah, a Pell Grant is it's the federal government subsidizing tuition depending on your income. So if you don't have any money to go to college, just so you know, I had a friend. She was an Hispanic lady, and she wanted to put her daughter through college, and she literally had no money to put her through college. And she bought a book, and this is before the internet, but or it was the internet wasn't as big as it is today. She bought a book on grants, and because she was a woman, she was Hispanic, all those things, she got literally her whole college education paid for. One of those is a Pell Grant, which is run by the federal government, where they give you money every year if you meet certain financial, you're struggling financially. And I was looking it up for the 2021-22 school year. You can make as much as $6,500 for the school year. Now, with this, the college thing, they want to add 10 grand on top of that, and if you have a Pell Grant, and 10 grand if you have a student loan. So literally, you're getting 26
20
twenty
grand.
six thousand, yeah, 26,500 back from the government. That's without even applying for any other grant. So it's insanity that
I
they're giving
identify
those
as
kind
a
of money.
Hispanic
So
woman. I quit. I give in. I'm going with the tide. I'm tired.
well, and I'll tell you what, I people are struggling. They need. I'm not going to argue that point, but what I am going to argue is the government shoveling cash in the areas that they want to shovel for their own personal goal, and the right as well. They're
It's
just
just it's politicians. Absolutely. I mean, they're not. It's the George Carlin bit about how they're two puppets on the same guy is so scarily accurate. It's exactly what it is. It's that's why they don't let third parties in. That's why they try to keep the Libertarian Party did a great job of keeping itself a joke, but when they have been semi-serious, they literally, the one time when Ross Perot got close, they changed the rules. They said you can't come in unless you have X, Y, and Z, unless you pay off these foundations to get into the debates, which coincidentally are run by us. Like, they completely changed the rules to make it so that nobody could ever get in again. Literally from Ross Perot, who was, 92? Is that right? Any idea?
All I remember is Ross had big ears and
great ideas.
and I think he only got 1% of the vote if I remember.
Yeah, well, that's neither here nor there. Hey, the best we've ever done is 3%. Go Gary. Good job, buddy. Just
but why do we vote? We vote for these people because we're sick of the career politicians who seem to always want to take our money and tell us how to live, and we don't want to live that way.
I mean, everybody's
actually it's up to the millennials. It's up to you guys. It's the next generation, because obviously my generation, we don't have it in us.
I'm trying. That is literally what I'm here for, because and it's nice to hear you say that, because there is a lot of it where it feels like sometimes I am just screaming into the wind, where when I mention these things and I say it over and over again till the 3 or 4 people who I talk to, speaking of 2 of you guys right here, get tired of hearing me say it. But it's something that I think has to. I was actually having this, not necessarily argument, but debate almost with another coworker, manager technically. Not technically, he's my man. He's a manager anyway. That it's not worth trying to convince people of something that, like, for the most part, it's not worth trying to convince people. They're going to believe what they're going to believe, and that it saves yourself a lot of headaches and things like that. And I just don't believe that. I mean, I believe there's a line for everybody where it's just not worth arguing, because at that point you're taking away from yourself. But one, I think that you can hone your arguments against people. Even, I mean, to me, some of the best arguments I've ever come up with have been against people who are just never, ever, 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 ever going to agree with me, no matter what I said, because of the fact that I said it. Like, I seem to either generate or attract those people. I don't know what that says about me, but anyway, they tend to make some of the best sharpening stones, because they're not going to give, And so if you can get even like a no, but like it helps your argument, right? Or if you can get them to resort to yelling at you or using ad hominem attacks, that tends to mean that they've run out of arguments. But
I would argue that maybe a Tim Pool probably would have said the same thing, or that everyone was against him, and he was the only one in the room screaming, "This is not right."
Right,
so well, maybe you're in the right room.
Time to move to West Virginia. I'm coming, Tim. Okay. Last thing I wanted to hit on, and then we can wrap if you guys are ready to start heading that way. Was I think it's so tough for me, because I lean conspiracy theory. I love conspiracies. I love them. They're stories. They're fun. It's things to look into and guess about. I don't know. I love them. And so to me, it feels like pretty intentional when it works out consistently in the favor of the people making the mistakes. But so you've got the banks always, so to come back to the government subsidized and then guaranteed the loans, the banks then never said no, and then the colleges raised all their prices, right? But then you also have the private sector, because the private sector then basically made it so that even if you want to be a janitor, you need a bachelor's degree in cleaning supplies. Like, they've made it to the point where dang near every job outside of minimum wage requires some kind of degree, right? So then you basically, to get into the labor force in any way where you could actually hope to pay off a loan like that, you need to go to college. Like, to make any real money, to be formidable in any way, you would need to go to college almost. And if you do, I mean, self-educated, dear God, they would look at you like, I mean, you could read the exact same books, do the exact same type of like studying, but if you don't do it while paying tens of thousands of dollars and being forced to be in a room where the person at the front literally doesn't know you're alive or notice if you're there week to week, and has never lived in the real world. For the vast majority of them, they've only ever been in academia. They've never had to fight for their job. They literally got a job, lasted long enough that they can never be fired and can say whatever they want. But that it's almost like they prey on 18-year-olds, and then it's like a hazing thing. Like so then people literally at companies, this is the thing to me that I've experienced, like where people will be like, it's kind of I went through this, so you have to as well, right? I went through the college experience, so I'm going to require, I need for this position for them to have a bachelor's degree or whatever it may be. I need you to prove that you can go to college. I've heard that so many times. Prove that you're able to do it. That's the value of going to college. And that to me is the system that they created to make it so that people have to go into it, or they don't get to really participate in society. They sit at the kids' table for their whole lives. So
I'm guilty of that. So I had a high school diploma. You are talking right to me on that one.
I wasn't trying
so
to.
I went to high school. And I was at a job. Actually, I can say the job because they're no longer in company, Fleetwood. Motorhomes, mobile homes, travel trailers. And I went to my manager and I said, "Boss, I wanna get into management." And he goes, "You can't get into management unless you have a degree." And I said, "I have a degree." I go, "It's like I have a degree of a school of hard knocks." I went out there and I figured it out. And he's all, "No, you got to have a degree." And I didn't understand it. But I said, "Okay, I'm going to teach you a lesson. I'm going to go to school and play your stupid game." And it really irritated me. I think that's probably where you're sitting too right now, Jared. And I went to school and I actually enjoyed it. I had a good time. It wasn't like high school. In high school, you had to memorize a bunch of crap, and and then at the end of each semester, you get a final, and the final asks you questions that they didn't cover in class. Where the hell did this come from? so that's I didn't do well in high school, but I enjoyed college because you had to do projects and those types of things. But after I got the degree, it opened the glass ceiling for me, and I was able to get jobs into leadership. Now, when I was hiring people, as you both know, you put an ad for a job, whatever that position is, and you get like 100 resumes or 150 resumes. So you're thinking, well, how do I funnel through these 100 resumes or 150 to get the right person for the job? Yeah. So believe it or not, the degree does two things. One, it helps filter out the people that worked that sold donuts for a year and claimed that they're a massive baker,
sure,
or worked a register at McDonald's and claimed they owned it. Where they're not entirely honest with what their experience is. And the second thing is people don't stay at jobs for a long period of time. So if someone can commit to 4 years in a college, if they can commit to that for 4 years, then they got hope. And if they don't, then they really don't got hope. And that's so believe it or not, it was one, a filtering tool for applicants. And then two, it was, can you commit to something for 4 years? And that's how, and believe me, I was on your side. And let's say you start a business, you open a brewery, and you apply and you get 500 people. How are you going to filter through those folks? And it's a good filtering tool. And I hate to put down a degree as a filtering tool, but it was very effective.
What do you think to the idea that might be a generational fact, meaning it was true when you were coming up and has been up until the last 10 years?
I believe that is my thought on that. It's dead right now. I think college. I think it's almost a hindrance now than a value, because I know people who have degrees in sewing socks. It's just they're not. What is it? The liberal dance. Yeah.
Bigfoot.
My dad used to call it
Loch Ness.
Underwater basket weaving is what he used to call them. But
there it is. That's where that reference is from. I thought it was from a show.
So for me, I'd rather get someone full of piss and vinegar who doesn't know what they're doing and let me mold them, And someone who has a degree and think they should make $250,000 because they got a 4-year piece of paper in their pocket.
I've said that for years. I was actually going to say, when you were using your example of me having a brewery, I think I would also use degrees as a filtering tool. If you have one, get the hell out.
There you go.
And there's definitely room for. There's some places where if you're if you're going to be replacing Fauci, and please, dear God, be somebody good, I want you to have degrees in virology and microbiology, and 100% doctors for sure. In fact, I would prefer it if they would take some update courses and not just get taught 30 years ago when medicine was done with rocks and scotch tape. But, I do think at this point that now for the fact that one, it's 100% ideologically driven. It used to be where you would go to learn how to think critically. That's what college was. And the things that you learn there depend on what you're trying to study, but that you learn how to problem solve and critically think and to be able to be an adult. That was what I was understanding it to be. And now it's the place to go to never be questioned, never be challenged, to solidify any beliefs that you hold and never be challenged, and to do literally whatever the hell you want, and to have that be forgiven, I think sucks. So do you want to chime in on that? I have one last question before we wrap up, if you guys are all right with that. So my question was, so I think all of us are pretty clearly in the realm of student debt forgiveness, being that the taxpayer eats the debt. We're all 100% against it, right?
Yes.
And so what would you think? I don't even know what I would think about this, so honest thoughts, but what would you think if what was going to happen was that either the taxpayer was going to eat it? I mean, say it's like it ends up being $3,000 a person. So, it's probably not going to be that low, but say it's somewhere in that neighborhood. But that going forward they fix the problem, that they stop subsidizing the loans, they stop guaranteeing the loans, the banks stop approving every single loan, and they stop approving underwater basket weaving $30,000 school loans. And the schools stopped being able to charge these exorbitant amounts and require 50 credits to count as a completed semester. Would that be an acceptable middle ground? Because it really was a lot of 18-year-olds that got taken advantage of. Now, I don't think that means that they should necessarily be just forgiven and there's so many worse sob stories of people who got genuinely fully screwed, not just kind of convinced to do something dumb, but fully screwed by the government or banks or companies. There's 1,000 sob stories, millions out there, right? This is not the worst one, but it would be such a major societal shift. Do you think that would be something that would be feasible?
So when you talk about societal shift, let me pull it back a little bit from where I'm sitting. So we're saying that that doing this forgiveness loan for student loans will cost the U.S. about $500 billion. That's where the numbers coming in.
Oh, you know what? I did actually look that up today. It's $1.7 trillion in student loan debt that's out there. I don't know about what they would forgive, but that's what's out there.
So they're saying if they were to give back 10,000 for student loans, an extra 10,000 for the Pell Grants, 20,000, they're guesstimating it's $500 billion. So let's just throw $500 billion as a loose number. It may be high, maybe low, but it's a good starting point. We also just did the Inflation Reduction Act, which
Even though there's no inflation, right?
which they're claiming will cost the U.S. $739 billion. Now they claim they're going to get it from the rich. Regardless, it is 1.239. So let's say 1 trillion. It's 1 trillion in new spending this year alone. Now, last I checked, we were at projected at $29 trillion in debt. Most of it is being carried by China. Where does it end? Where does it end? If we do $1 trillion, I guarantee you, I will make a prediction that will come true. If the Democrats get in November because of this this throwing cash for your votes, it's going to happen again in the next election. And what's going to happen is we're going to add trillions and trillions to new debt until we implode. So the question is how do we stop spending? When to become fiscally responsible? And I'll tell you, let's fire both ends, both left and right, and figure out a new way of governing our damn government so that we are fiscally responsible and we stop freaking blowing through all this damn cash on things that probably should not be spending it on. So I took it back a little bit, but it's just the spending is what kills me because they're saying, like you said, the debt recover. I'm sorry, the college reimbursement will add 2,000 in new taxes to each American, and you're thinking we're looking at 5,000 on the spending just this year. It's irreversible if we can't pull out of it.
Not to mention the last 2 years of printing 3/4 of the money that's ever existed in this country.
And then allowing China, who I consider is the biggest enemy of the U.S., we let them hold our debt. That just doesn't make sense. And then they're manufacturing all of our goods, which is a different topic. But it's like we're already in their back pocket, and we're not. There's no signs of us pulling away from that. So I see it as a bigger issue.
For sure. Well, what do you think? Either
Yeah, I don't know.
final
I mean,
thoughts or answer to my question. Either way.
yeah, because I mean, I think you're saying that the government would just if they were to just come in and say, hey, we'll stop uh, giving out predatory loans, we'll stop this, we'll stop that, and as long as you guys hold up your end and pay for this forgiveness that we're doing right now. I don't know. It's just because it seems like the government is not um, trusted, and so I feel like at any moment they could just pass something else that'll, I don't know, remove that or something. I don't know. It's just, I mean, regardless, at the end of the day, whatever gets passed, we're just gotta. I mean, we gotta suck it up if we're gonna live here. If it gets passed, unfortunately. But I don't know. I don't know if I'll be okay with it. Um, yeah, I don't know if I'll be okay with it because, like, I know people who still have student loan debt, and this news came out. I'm getting links now about it, and they're like, "Oh, look, I can get my student loan
Right. Yeah.
forgiven and stuff," and it's just like, yeah, but then I don't know, like, and because then they'll say like, also like I'm gonna get this forgiven, so now I feel like I can go and get my master's or whatever. But then you're getting more student loan, you're getting into more debt, and so it's just like you feel it goes back to what I was saying in the beginning. It makes people like financially irresponsible when you put them in a position um, to have all of this debt and then just say like, it's okay, we'll forgive that. And so um, I just I don't like it. Like, if I were to have student loan debt, I feel like I would still want to pay it off, even if I had this opportunity to have it forgiven.
I think you're a
Um,
rare bird. Go ahead.
yeah, no, I know. It's just I don't know. It's just kind of like that like I made the decision and I knew what. Yeah, I went in this knowing what I was gonna get into, and so um, it was a price to pay for the education that I wanted, and I feel like I need to see it through. So
Do you
yeah,
think
so
it's probably likely that most people who think like that would have, by nature of being people who think like that, have made a good plan in the first place and not taken a loan for like a degree where they had no job prospects?
oh yeah, for sure. I mean, because even now, like some of the loans that are getting forgiven are for you know stupid things, or maybe not.
Underwater
Okay,
basket weaving, baby.
I won't call it a stupid thing, but it's just like maybe they're not even using their degree, or maybe they got the loan but they didn't even finish school.
You know what?
Like
Let's use
they didn't
Trumpian
even get the
language.
degree.
It's just a bad investment. It's like he said about the war. It's not a humanitarian crisis. It's just a bad investment. It's which to me is not the best art. It's still it doesn't need to necessarily be that they're bad. They're not bad. Well, there's plenty of them that are probably bad people. It just it has no bearing on whether they're necessarily a good or a bad person to me. It's more well, one, it's planning, but two, it's just a bank would never approve a loan on anything other than that, like, that has such a clear, like, if you get a loan for, let's use simple round numbers, if you get a loan for $100,000 and you do it for to get a bachelor degree in a field where the maximum, the person making the absolute most money in that field is making $50,000 a year, or probably less than that, because even that's not a terrible investment, but making like 10,000. You know what? Paintball's a great example. The highest paid professional paintball player makes $32,000 a year playing paintball. That is nothing. And so if they gave hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest in trainers and teaching and like reflexes and whatever, all of the, like, if it cost a crap ton of money to do that, it would be a terrible investment, and there's not a bank in the world that would take it on. But you make it a college and you give it guaranteed by the government, and they'll give you 3 of them.
Good point.
All right, you guys got anything else?
No.
I think that's it.
All right, gents. Go ahead.
I just want to add one more thing. So like, there's a Bible verse that says that the borrower is slave to the lender, and so I don't know if you guys have ever heard that, but I think it becomes that, like, when you borrow money, you're a slave to that person that let you borrow that money, and then now, like, with interest and things like that, people are becoming slaves to this student loan debt, and really it's a result of people not being able to manage their finances well. And so I don't know whose point it was, but it really it's in the family. I think it was Matt's point. It's in the family, and our families in the United States really need to start teaching their children, nieces, nephews, everybody, about how to be financially free, how to have financial peace, how to be able to succeed in life financially, save, and if you're going to use debt, use it wisely,
Smart decision making. I think that's a huge thing that doesn't really get hit on a lot.
Yeah, and so it really starts at home, starts with the community, church community, all that stuff. And so I think that we need to get back to that, where that we're learning about life things from the family and the community, and not expecting the education system to prepare us for life, because it doesn't.
That's an awesome, and actually, so an idea I had in the middle of this podcast, what I want to do is start ending every podcast with just having the U.S. debt clock up just for the last like 10 seconds, just to give everybody a little bit of a reminder. I think that's sobering as hell. If you ever do that, I'm telling you, go do that. Go do that for a minute. Just go sit and look at it and read all the crap on there. It's terrifying. Especially you look at debt per citizen and things like that. You're like, hey, I didn't agree to this bull crap. I didn't sign nothing. You find me my signature. All right, guys. Thank you very, very mucho.
All right. Thank you so much.
Take care, guys. Have a good night.
Bye, everybody.
Okay. Bye.
There it goes.